Hey, everybody, welcome back. Boy, that denim thing, that is just spectacular. It's there's so many different ways that we can enjoy one another's skills and their accomplishments. And I just so appreciate everybody who is instructing and contributing to this exciting conference. So before we get started on the project, there were a couple questions that were asked beforehand. And so I'm going to see if I can answer those. Somebody wanted to see how we fan the fabrics, and somebody also wanted to see how, fanning the fabrics and fussy cutting. So I'm going to just cut some squares, and they're different. They're not, I don't know. I'm just cutting some squares. How's that? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew them together, and then you'll see how the fanning process works. All right, so these are just 3.5-ish squares, and I'm going to put them in a 4 patch. So we've been working with a 9 patch, and now we'll have a 4 patch. All right, so that's what we're going to do the fanning for. And then someone was asking about fussy cutting. So fussy cutting is a way to make some people crazy because it involves a little bit of waste of fabric, but it gives you a focal point. So if I wanted to create a block that included this flower in its entirety, including the white edge if I wanted to use the white edge, what I would do is I would cut it larger than I wanted to. So let's just say I need, roughly 6.5 inches. So this would be, this is my chalk, this is my line. And then again, I'm just going to identify where that is. Okay, so I've got my space lined out. And what I'm going to do then next is I'm just going to take my ruler and I'm going to cut so that what I have is exactly what I want. Now, the interesting part about fussy cutting is it does two things. It gives you, again, like I said, a focal point that you can use as an accent, as many of my boutique members know. If there's a downside, so you can see, so if I'm making a 5.5-inch block, then I still have room to trim this and still get the flower. So that gives me my fussy cut flower. And since this is Ankara, I can either have it coming to the left or right, or I can have it going the opposite direction. But that's what a fussy cut does. It just gives you a central point to focus. All right. Any questions on that? We good? All right. Let's head over to the sewing machine and I'll stitch this 4 patch together and show you how to, okay, did we unplug the iron? Okay. Well, we probably have to unplug it and plug it up again because it has that safety shut off. All right, I'm going to go over to the sewing machine and we'll get started on this little stitching. All right. Okay. So I'm just going to stitch these squares together. And I've switched to my walking foot because I'm going to need it for the next phase of our casserole carrier. And if you have it, you have one and you haven't used it, this would be a great time for you to experiment. Because it's really kind of a life changer when you stop and think about it. Okay, and so I'm going to stitch this side together. using a 1/4 inch seam. And I'm going to finger press to the dark side. That sounds so Darth Vader-ish. I'm going to press to the dark side. Yeah, I know. It's called ad lib. Improv. All right, and then I'm just going to stitch across the top of this at a 1/4 inch. And my seams are nested. So that means one is going one direction and the other one is going the opposite direction, and that's the prerequisite for nesting your seams. Okay, so I'm gonna move this over here. Wait, there we go. So you can see that this seam is going to the right, my right, your left possibly, and this one is going the opposite direction. So when I sew together, and you can see it highly contrasted with these two fabrics, when you nest the seams, you're pretty much guaranteed, assured, that's a better word, assured that your corners are going to come together as you expect them. Now, when I turn them over, this is going to kind of flip the opposite direction, because some of these edges are going to separate. And you'll be able to, okay, which way do you want to flip? Just takes a minute to figure out which way it wants to flip. So what actually ends up happening is a couple of the threads break. All right, now that we have a close-up, it's not going to operate correctly. Let me do this. Let me trim off this extra fabric because that might help. Stuff happens, man, you know, it's like, okay. Just ask my boutique members about the wagon wheel. We had major fun with that one. Okay, so here this is. Now, I got that little extra off of there. So, can you see the fan? Okay, can you see that? It looks like a checkerboard. I'm coming back, I'm gonna move back. Can you see it? Right there, there's a little checkerboard. That's what a fan seam looks like. So when you press it, it's much, much flatter than if you just have them crossing over. Okay? We good with that? All right. So now you know what fussy cutting is, and now you know how to nest the seams, and you know how to fan them. All right? There will not be a quiz at the end of the program. All right, let's move back over to the cutting table so we can continue our project. All right. So here we are. Get that out the way. We have our lovely rectangle that probably is somewhere along the lines of 18 inches across or so. This one is 18 3/4 there, and it's 18 3/4 here. Now, I'm going to give you instructions. I'm going to give you the technique, and I'm going to give you permission to adjust your measurements, because once you understand the technique, it doesn't matter if you're starting with an 18.5 inch square, a 10.5 inch square, a 30.5 inch square. All right. So, second question that you have to answer for yourself is, do you want your beautiful piece on the inside and on the outside? Or what if we use part of it for our casserole holder and then take the other part of it and maybe make a pillow or make a trivet or a placemat or a small square table runner. Anything is possible. I know when I made mine the first time and I thought about cutting it up, I'm like, I don't want to cut it up because I want to make this a wall hanging. So I didn't cut it up at all. You have that option. What we're going to work with is the 18.5-inch square. So I'm a believer in both and. I can do both things and still have fun with them. So this is, I'm going to cut this at 19 inches using my cutting mat as a guide, just to make my initial cut. And I'm going to focus on the blue over here, and I'm going to leave my orange intact. All right, so there's one straight cut. And I'm going to square off one of these edges. And this doesn't have to be perfect. However, following the technique helps up your skills for your next project. So I'm going to trim that edge off just so I can make that square. And then I'm going to find my 18.5 inches. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. Ooh, I'm going to have 18 inches exactly. So that's where the technique comes in. So I'm going to go back. I'm going to make this one 18 inches. And then I'm going to trim this other piece down to make it 18 inches as well. All right. And it's not perfectly straight, so no big. 6, 16, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. Okay. Straighten that one up. And then I'm going to take the other ½ inch off of one side. So I've already, oh, we'll take it off of this side. So I'm just going to take my ½ inch off of here. So now I'm down to 18 by 18. Am I sure it's okay? It's close enough because when I fold it in half, it all edges up like it's supposed to. All right. So what I'm going to do, instead of using both pieces, I'm just going to take one of the cutoffs from the fabric. And this, I guess this is another example of fussy cutting. It's got a grid in it. So if I want the grid to come out evenly, asymmetrically, I'm going to fold it in half, make sure my lines are lined up. It's folded in half. I need an 18-inch square. So I'm going to count over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 18. That's 18 inches. So I'm going to cut that because 9 times 2 is 18. There's a lot of math in quilts. I mean, yeah, math and quilting. And sometimes it's like, I didn't think I'd be using this once I got out of high school. Okay, then I'm going to do the same thing this way. This isn't, like I said, this is another version of fussy cutting because I just want these to be sort of balanced. Fold it in half. My lines are lined up. And then I'm going to come over 9 inches. And I'm going to cut this. All right, that's all lined up. take that off. All right. So now I have my outside and my inside. Okay. Same size, 18 inches. Your instructions say 18 and a half. It's no big deal. It's just not that big a deal. So what I'm going to do, and the technique is, we're going to use our Insulbright. Now, Insulbright has a metallic component to it that reflects heat or cold back to its source. This, I think I had already cut to be 18 inches. So the technique involved is, this should be a 1/2 inch smaller than the square that you started with. All right. So I know this is 18 and a half inches. So I'm just going to take off the 1/2 inch. Okay, what's the big deal about the 1/2 inch? I take off the 1/2 inch so that I don't have an excessive amount of bulk in my seam allowances. This should give you 1/4 of an inch all the way around. So you just barely catch, you'll just barely catch the Insulbright. And we're also going to use a piece of batting. I like to use the batting to give it a little bit of softness when I go to set it down, if that makes any sense. And if you look at the Insulbright package, when it tells you to make stuff, it tells you to do 2 layers of cotton batting. And I just find that it's just nice. It gives it an extra quality that working with just the Insulbright alone doesn't, but it's up to you. So I'm taking this other 1/2 inch off of here. And then I'm going to lay the Insulbright on top of the batting. Now, normally I would use my 505 basting spray, but I'm not going to do that today. I'm going to take my, okay, let me walk this through. I want the batting to be against the outside. So I'm going to take my outside piece, okay? And I'm going to lay it on top of the batting. The reason I'm doing it this way is because there's an order. Okay, let me look at my notes. A little case of brain freeze. Okay, so the 2 fabric squares go right sides together. That's what I was missing. These go right sides together. This is not making sense. Okay. Gotcha. Okay, there we go. All right, so the Insulbright is up. The outer, the inside, the inner piece, I'm stuttering. Okay. This is my lining. This faces the Insulbright. Okay.
Is it on the shiny side of the Insulbright?
It doesn't really, I don't really think it matters because it looks about the same to me. Do you have a preference?
No.
Yeah, no, it always looks the same to me. Okay. So there's my lining. And here's my top. So there's my top, right sides together. There's the right sides together piece. Okay. Yes.
Okay, so you have, I'm just going over it again.
Okay.
You have the outer piece and the lining piece, right sides together.
Yes.
Then you have the lining piece and the insole bright
Yes.
together, and then you have the batting on there.
Yes.
So if you're looking at it, you'll see the batting on the right, well, on one side.
On the top.
Right, and then on the bottom, when you look at the bottom piece, we're looking at the wrong side of the
Top.
top.
Yes. So we have the batting. We have the insole bright. We have the wrong side of the lining piece, but it's Ankara, so you can't really tell.
Right.
And then we have the right side of the outside facing up. All right, so right sides together on the fabric. Insole bright next to the lining. And then the batting on top. Now, if this is too much for you, you don't have to use the batting. This is just my preference. Okay. So as you can see, there's about 1/4 of an inch showing. In quilting, it's often said, well, you can do, what do I want to say? You can do 1/4 of an inch, you can do a scant 1/4 of an inch, or you can use a generous 1/4 of an inch. So in order to just catch some of this, we might end up being a generous 1/4 of an inch. Okay, so the next step is to pin. Where's my pins? Or baste. They were over here. I'll just use these. You got quilting pins in your, oops, are they over here? Sorry. I don't know what I did with them. Okay, well, here we go again.
We'll get you some pins.
Okay. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna pin this so it stays in place. Quilting pins are great because they're curved and you don't have to lift the fabric up. You guys tracking with me so far?
We got a lot of yes.
Okay, good. What?
Take a note. Okay,
Good.
we got a no here. So, and then I noticed before she said she just still didn't have it. I just want to go over it one more time.
Okay.
Let's call it our sandwich.
This is the sandwich.
How is our sandwich one more time?
Okay, our sandwich is, we have the outside face up, right side up. We have the lining, whether you're using just a solid fabric or whether you're using your other piece that you cut for 2.5. I mean, cut for 18 or 18.5.
Right.
Those two are right sides together. Then you have the insole bright. The insole bright is next to your lining piece. And then you have the extra piece of batting. Does that help? Oh, no, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna type it on the thing. There we go. She got it.
Okay, good. I want you to make sure, let me know if you got it. If you don't, no, let me know if you don't got it, because then we can fix it. All right. So I'm going to move on to the next step. And this one is kind of what do I want to say? It's kind of a necessary evil, but it makes for a much nicer finish. So I think what my instructions said was to come down about 1.5 inches on either side. And I'm going to mark that. And I'm going to do 1.5 inches over here. Now, 1.5 inches, I'm just going to mark 1 inch, yeah, 1.5 inches from your fabric side. And then what we're going to do is we're going to draw a line across there, a diagonal line. You know what? I think 2 inches might, no, this will work. And I'm just going to draw a diagonal line across here. And I'm going to do the same thing for all 4 corners. Okay, Miss Jana, why are we doing that? We're doing that because we're going to leave these corners open so we can insert the webbing. If this is too much trouble for you, you can always just top stitch the webbing onto the outside of the piece. I just think it gives a cleaner finish. All right, so here's my 1/2 inch over here. Here's my 1/2 inch. Over there. Draw a line across there. There's my 1/2 inch there. 1.5 inches, sorry.
So that's a 1/2 inch marking at each corner.
1.5 inch, 1.5 inch, you come down and then you just draw a diagonal. So it's a 1/2 inch in on this side. I mean, 1.5 inches, sorry. 1.5 inches over here, you draw the diagonal. Okay, how we doing? You guys marking? Okay, so we got all of that laid out. And then I'm gonna mark maybe 3 or 4 inches just on one random side, and that's to remind you, don't stitch that closed. All right, so here's how this works. We're gonna start at the opening. We're gonna use either 1/4 of an inch or 3/8 of an inch or whatever it takes you to get the edge of your batting caught in there. So let's just say 3/8 of an inch or 1/2 inch, if that makes it easier. Then we're going to come up to this line, to our diagonal line, and we're going to stop. And we're going to take a couple back stitches, not many, just a couple. Then we're going to come over here and we're going to stitch on this side, taking a couple back stitches and coming down to here and doing the same thing. All right. And we're going to do that on all 4 sides. So all 4 corners are going to be left open, in addition to the space that we're going to use to turn all of this inside out. All right. Are we good? Is it working for everybody? Okay, great. All right, let's go over to the sewing machine.
Sorry, Jenna.
Yes, ma'am.
Can you repeat the corners again?
Repeat the corners. Okay. The corners are measured. Where are we? Yeah, the corners are measured about 1.5 inches on either side of the corner. And then you draw a diagonal line. You see it? It's probably hard to see the yellow. Okay. All right. So, like I said, I have my walking foot and I'm going to stitch starting where I have my opening. Take a couple of back stitches. I'm using a size 14 needle and I'm just using cotton thread. The real benefit of the walking foot is that it allows you to, it moves all 4 layers at one time. Okay, needle up, move this, come back over. Go up, swing this around.
Janet, what's your stitch then?
2.5 millimeters, just standard stitch length. Needle up, swing it around. Back stitch. And I'm coming up to my opening. All right. Let's head back over to the cutting table. All right, so I've got my layers all stitched down. Let's put the pins back. So you can see that I've got a little bit of the blue showing. I've caught all my seams over here. So I'm going to turn this inside out, starting from here. Now, this is where some of the magic happens, so don't ask me about the corners yet. So I'm just turning this inside out. And just take your time, don't hurry, because you do have 4 layers going on here. Okay. It's coming. Honest, it's coming. Oh man, this is so much fun. All right, almost, almost. Almost feels like turning the comforter inside out. Ah, there we go. All right. Okay, so there's my corners that are left open. Okay. All right. So there's my top piece. There's my inside. Here's my opening. So I'm just going to kind of close this down a little bit because I'm going to catch it when I sew around the edges. And this was a bias piece, so that's probably not a good place for me to have stopped stitching, but I couldn't see it from that side because bias will stretch, but that's all right. We'll tame it. So now we're going to press this. I think we still have some steam. Yes. And just take your time and flatten it out. How's everybody doing? Okay, so I'm going to turn this. And I'm going to press that. Kind of smush it in there. And then I'm going to take my little glue stick. This is just a plain old ordinary glue stick. I mean, I know I have overachievers in here, and I know we got people who like extra credit. So you can actually slip stitch this if you want to. I don't want to. So I'm just going to put a little glue on that. And I'm going to make sure that it's lying as close to the edge as I can. See that? Just as close to the edge as I can. And then I'm going to press it, and that's going to help it to stick just a little bit better. All right. So what I'm going to do now, because I think it's going to make it easier, and it might not be in the same order that's on the, while I have this completely flat, I'm going to go ahead and do my quilting. All right. Anybody ready to quilt? Yes, Miss Carrie.
The corners aren't pressed, right? They're still open.
They're still open.
Okay. Pressing glue. Okay. That's it right now.
Okay, and the reason I'm not gonna close it is because if you put the strap on it, then you've got to wrestle with the strap while you're trying to quilt it, and it's much easier to just quilt it while it's flat. All right, let's head over to the sewing machine. So this is one of those that you can do a number of different things. It's not going to take heavy quilting. It's not going to need heavy quilting. So I'm going to use my walking foot to kind of help me. I'm going to lengthen my stitch to about 3 millimeters. There we go. And I can either stitch in these ditches because I'm not confident that I can do anything exotic or crazy, and that's fine. You just position your walking foot or your needle in the ditch. And I'm just gonna stay that one. And I can sort of and then I can come along the edge just a little bit. And depending on whatever my design is, I can go all the way along the edge. Okay, I have an interesting piece there, so I'm just going to cut this, turn this, and I'm going to stitch back down. This is one of those cases where the stitching, the quilting is really to hold the sandwich together, the different layers together. It's a great way to practice, and if I really want to get fancy, I could break out my, in fact, maybe I'll do that. I'll do some of this. And then we'll do a little free motion quilting. How's that? Anybody want to do a little free motion quilting? Somebody better say yes. Somebody's got to say yes. Yes, there's a yes. Okay. All right. So I'm just going to do a couple more lines of the straight line quilting. And then I'm going to get you ready for the, yes, ma'am.
So you touch this over the glue.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. Let's just think of it as a fusible. In fact, let me go do that now. So I'm just going to start here. I can start anywhere, but I'll pick it up. I'll start here. And I'm just going to close that up and stitch right there. And that's why you make your insel bright and your batting a 1/2 inch smaller than whatever size you're using, because that way you don't have all the bulk that you would normally have. Okay, oops. Stitching before I'm ready. Up here a little bit. And then I'm going to turn this one more time. Yes.
Are you cutting the thread when you change directions as you quilt?
If I stop with my needle down, no. If I actually rearrange or reposition the sandwich, then yes, I am cutting the thread. But for the most part, I'm not. Yes, all right. So yes, ma'am.
Do you use any designer stitches rather than straight stitches when you quilt?
That's an interesting question. I did use a decorative stitch on one of the quilts when I was doing my binding. And I probably wouldn't do that again because it took so much longer. But to answer your question, no, I typically don't. But to also answer your question, you very easily could because there's some great stitches in these sewing machines. Yes, ma'am.
How densely are you quilting?
I am quilting about no more than 6 inches apart. That's another great question. When you are quilting or trying to decide how densely to quilt, it's always helpful to look on the back of your batting package because it will tell you how far apart you can quilt. Some say don't quilt more than 4 inches apart. Others say you can quilt up to 8 inches apart. And so I'm going to put, okay, I'm going to put one more. Now I'm going, okay. So now let's get to the fun party.
Another question, is there a need to change the machine tension?
No. And I'm going to qualify that. My machine will adjust the tension itself under certain circumstances. Like if I shorten up my stitch length, it will adjust the tension, or I can adjust the tension manually. But in this case, there's really no need. If you're using your walking foot and your fabric is moving through correctly, and you can see on the back of your, let's see if we can get this in here. You can see on the back that your stitches are even, then there's no tension adjustment needed. Okay, does that answer that question? Okay, so I'm going to take off the walking foot. I'm going to get my free motion foot, and I have 2 different ones. Yes.
Just want to say thank you. Some people didn't even know that about the batting, the message in the back of the bag.
You're welcome. Okay, I have 2 different kinds of open-toed feet. Where are we? We right here? Okay, this one is all metal and it has an open toe to it. I think you can see it pretty well against my black shirt. See that? And this one is a closed toe foot. And it has a wider opening because if I wanted to use a decorative stitch and free motion, I can do that. I'm going to use the wider foot because it's plastic and I can see through it. And because it's closed, if I have any loose threads or if I have any decorative elements on here, this is not going to grab it as quickly as the open toe foot will do. All right. You guys still with me? So I'm going to put my foot on. And I'm going to lower my feed dogs. Now your feed dogs are these teeth that pull the fabric through the machine. And you can see, if you rub your finger across it, you can feel it. Let me see if I can. And if I run this pin across it, you probably can't hear it, but you can hear it. So I have, usually your feed dog mechanism is either on the side or it's at the very back of your machine, depending on the machine. Mine is on the side. And what that does is it takes those feed dogs down. So I have a smooth surface here. All right. So it's not going to move my fabric. I now have to move my fabric. So I'm going to find a corner of a block just because I can. First thing you do is you drop your needle into your fabric and you bring your bobbin thread up. Come on. There we go. You bring it up to the top of your piece. Well, why do we do that, Miss Janet? We do that because we don't want the thread congregating on the back of the piece. It's lovingly referred to as a bird's nest or a rat's nest or something like that. And it's really just kind of ugly. So now this foot, as you can see, it has a little bit of spring to it. That's what the presser feet, the free motion feet do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a couple stitches in place. And now I have to move my hands at the same pace as my machine is going if I want to get even stitches. So let's just see how that's going to work. Okay, so I'm stitching slowly. I'm stitching slowly. I'm going to speed up. And I'm just, this is called a meander. It's one of the first stitches most people use. Now, some people say do not cross over stitches. I say do what you need to do. Because if I have an area that's not quilted and I need to get back to it, I can do that. So I'm pulling the fabric, I'm moving my hands, I'm controlling the stitch length. Sometimes you have to stop and reposition. Yes, ma'am.
So you broke up a little bit. Can you explain again why you bring the bobbin thread up again?
You bring the bobbin thread to the top of your piece so it doesn't get caught underneath when you're sewing. It's not like when you're starting off the edge of the fabric and you're moving the fabric away from it. You're starting in the fabric and you're moving around in the same space. And believe me, it gets ugly. It's going to be the first thing that you don't do, and it's going to be the first thing that you say, oh, that's why she told us to do that. It's just an excellent habit to get into. Okay, so I'm going to go a little bit faster. And I'm also moving my hands a little bit faster. So my stitches are staying the same length essentially. And you see how I'm folding this over on the side? This is how you can stitch larger pieces on your domestic machine. It's about managing the bulk. And it's okay to stop and pause. And this is a great practice piece because we're not going to enter it into a show. We're just trying to get it to serve us functionally. Okay, so now here's my extra credit. I'm going to do some circles. I'm actually going to stitch around the circles in my design. I'm going to come around. I'm going to figure 8. I'm going to change direction. I'm going to come all the way back around because that's what you do when you're making pebbles. Change direction. Okay, who's game? Who's going to try making pebbles? Okay, so I'm going to come over here. I'm just going to spin around till I get to the blue ones. And this is the pebbles are a great practice exercise because you speed up, you slow down, your stitches will change. They won't always be perfect, but it's probably one of the best ways to up your skills. Because in order to make a circle, you have to keep going. Well, Miss Janet, I don't think I can do that. Well, whether you believe you can or you can't, you're probably right. But I believe you can. And then you stop. Oops, see, now I just butted up against that. And so my stitches got stuck. So I'm just going to fold this over and I'm going to keep going and act like nothing happened. And then I see I have a blip on my stitch. So I'm just going to stitch around it a couple more times. Because if you think your stitching isn't up to your satisfaction, then just throw more thread at it. Okay. So I think that's going to hold it together. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to raise my presser foot. I'm going to pull my thread out a little bit, and then I'm going to put my needle back down in the same place. I'm going to lower the needle, bring it back up, and then I'm going to pull my bobbin thread back up to the top. And then I'm going to cut it. As soon as I find my little, there they are, I'll use my scissors. And that way, and yes, I have a thread cutter, and no, I would not, if I use a thread cutter, I'm going to get little leftovers, little tags on the back, and I don't want that, because then I have to either clip it off or I have to explain to somebody why I didn't. So this is what the back looks like. Okay. Now here's my grace and mercy that I extend to myself and to other quilters. If you can't see it from 20 feet or going 20 miles an hour, don't worry about it. Okay. All right. So there's the front. And I've got straight lines quilting. I've got the meander going on. I've got my circles going on. And the wonderful part about this, I don't know if you can see it, but can you see the texture? You see that texture? Okay, we good?
Looks good, nice.
Okay. Let's head back over to the cutting table and we'll figure out what we're going to do with these corners. Okay. Oh, there's my pins. Here's my quilting pins. They fell down. So let me show you the quilting pins for those of you who are not familiar with them. It's curved. You see that curve? It's curved. So when I go to pin, see, I don't have, it just goes in and it comes up by the way it's designed. So you got some of those for those of you who got your conference kit. And for those of you who didn't, they're readily available at some of the big box stores, but they're great if you like to pin. All right. Yes, ma'am.
Janet, do you use a clapper, or if so, would you, this I'm sorry, they're putting the questions in the chat and it's moving as I'm talking.
Oh, no problem.
So, do you use a clapper?
No. I don't. All right, so here's these corners, right? So what I'm going to do, can you see this? All right, so I'm turning this corner down. I've turned one corner down. Okay. And what I'm going to do is I am going to take my scissors and I'm going to take this little piece of batting. See, you got a little bit of Insul Bright, you got a little piece of batting. And I'm going to cut it. Don't cut the fabric along that diagonal. And then I'm just going to tuck this one corner over top of it so it stays in place. And I'm going to tuck this corner down. All right. You guys with me? Yes.
No, there's a camera angle. She wants to make sure you get a little closer in. No, yeah.
Okay, can you see that? That's where it's full. I'll do it again.
Yeah.
Because I have 4 of them. Yes.
The other question, so there's no top stitching or anything around that those corner pieces?
No, ma'am. I mean, unless you want to. But if you top stitch, you got to make sure you leave the opening because the opening is where your tabs are going to go. So here's I've got this folded back. There's my line. I'm going to take my scissors and I'm just going to cut. Don't cut your fabric. I'm just going to cut that. Okay. And then I'm going to turn one piece over the batting. So when I put my finger down in here, I feel fabric. And then I'm just going to take this piece so that diagonal line that we drew is now really a diagonal opening. Okay? Does that help? I'm going to do it again. I'm just going to fold my corners down, exposing my interfacing and Insul Bright. Okay, Miss Janet, I accidentally cut my fabric. Now what do I do? You take that little design tool we call a seam ripper, you pull out a couple of stitches, and you make your diagonal a little bit bigger. Okay, because it's all gonna get sewn together in the end. All right, so I've got that turned down. I have this turned down. So I have my third. And the last one. Pull your fabric back, front and back. Trim that off. Turn the piece over top of that. And turn this piece down. And now we have our fourth. So I'm going to take the iron and just hit these. Okay, there's one. There's two. thread. Three. And here's the last one. Okay, how's everybody doing? We got our corners turned? You guys all right? Or are you scratching your head now? Yes.
So someone wants you to explain again how you had the process of pulling the thread through when you finish free motion quilting.
Okay, I'll do that when
We
I
can
go
do-
back over there.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mhm.
Okay, so now for the tabs and the D-rings. You have the 2 D-rings that came in your kit, and you have about 24 inches of webbing. All right, so for the tabs, we're going to cut 2 4-inch pieces, give or take. It can be 3.5, it can be 4. Because let me explain to you what we're going to do. Because what we're going to do is we're going to turn this down, insert our D-ring, and then we're going to stitch this down before we put it into the carrier. All right. So 3.5, 4 inches, whatever works for you. And then I should have, yeah, I do. I have about 15, a little more than 15 inches. So again, it's not an exact science. So we're going to treat it as such, not the exact science. I'm going to take my D-ring and put it on my webbing. And then I'm just going to use a clip to hold it till I get to the sewing machine. So then once we stitch this down so that it doesn't move, then we're going to take our piece and insert the D-ring, and that's where we'll top stitch this closed. Okay? You tracking with me? All right. So let's go back to the sewing machine and switch out the foot. Okay, I'm going to take off my free motion foot and just put a generic foot down on here. This is just my general foot. Okay. You know what? I'm going to do my skinny foot, my 1/4-inch foot. That's going to let me get closer. I have a single needle, a single hole in my throat plate, which means I can only go straight, I can only do straight stitches. If you want to zigzag yours, just make sure you have the correct foot. Okay, so I'm just, oops, and guess what? I have to put my feed dogs back up because otherwise it's not gonna move. Okay, so I'm just gonna move this. Just gonna stitch this, back stitch this a couple times. Yes.
Can you make a fabric strap instead of the webbing?
Yes, you can. If you make a fabric strap, you might want to put a little piece of batting inside of it to reinforce it. Okay, there's one. And here's the other one. Okay, so here's it's stitched down. There's a white thread so you can see it. And see how this white thread carried on the back? That's what happens when you're free motion quilting if you don't bring your thread up to the top. So the next thing I'm going to do is pick two corners. And I am going to insert my tab down in my corner. Okay, I've got a little bit of extra room on the sides, and that's okay. I'm going to clip this so it doesn't move. And I'm going to put the other one at the opposite corner. Out of there. We good? Yes.
Yes. Are you doing, they're doing opposite corners, correct?
Opposite corners. Yes. Opposite corners. See, is it starting to look like the carrier? Woohoo! All right. And I'm just, because I have a straight, I can only do straight stitches. I'm going to do some straight stitches to go across. Or I could change my foot, but that's too much like extra work. All right. Then I'm going to back stitch. Now I'm going to accidentally cut my thread, and then I'm going to go stitch this again. Okay. Lift that up and double stitch that. Okay. So there's the first one. All nice and stitched in. And here comes the second one. And I'm stitching one row, and then I'm moving over about 1/8 of an inch, and I'm double stitching a second row. Because we just don't want to drop that casserole when we get to wherever it is we're going. Okay. So here we are. We have our two opposite sides together. Yes.
So the question is, the 4-inch webbing, is it folded in half with the D ring attached. So is it a full half or just a little bit?
No, it's the full
The
half.
full half. Okay.
Because what you want to do is you want to get the full length doubled over to go down into the carrier so it's sturdy. Okay? Is that good?
Yes.
All right. So now we have our firewood holder for those of you who have wood burning fireplaces. Then the next step is pretty much the same thing. I'm going to take my strap. I'm going to insert it in the opposite, the other open space. And I'm going to clip this. And the reason I want to do this to both sides is to insert that. And you can kind of decide how long a handle you want. We say 15 inches. Push this down about maybe an inch so that it's got a good place to stay. All right. Make sure it's flat. All right. So that's pretty good. That's a pretty good length. So I'm going to stitch this. Same thing. I'm going to double stitch it. And I'm going to move over a little bit. I'm going to stitch it again. Okay. Do the same thing to the other side. Make sure that your webbing doesn't flip over or slip out. Okay. All right, that's straight. Move that over just a little bit. Okay. So there's the strap stitched down, double stitch reinforced. So I bring that up. I put one D-ring through it. I put the other D-ring through it. And there's my. All right, is everybody feeling accomplished? Come on now.
Awesome. Awesome, awesome, awesome.
And this one is a little bit smaller than the original, but it's for a different size casserole. Yes.
Can you just go over that last step one more time? The D, I guess the D ring and
The D-ring,
and the
okay.
strap.
Do I have another D-ring? I don't have another D. Somebody got to get a D, okay. You want me to talk you through it? Okay. So for the, okay, let me, where are we? Should I go here or should I be over there? Let's go over to the cutting table and you can get a little bit better view. Okay. So here we are. Here's the D-ring. Oh, improv. This is my D-ring. This is my webbing. I'm going to put my webbing through my D-ring, fold it in half. And then through my opening, I'm going to insert the webbing far enough down so that my first I'm going to stitch, I'm going to stitch along my webbing to secure my D-ring so it doesn't just slide up and down, up and down. And then I'm going to insert my webbing into my opening, okay, into my opening so I can stitch it down. And I'm going to stitch across one time and back stitch, and then I'm going to come down a little bit farther and back stitch as well. Okay. And then for the side webbing, I'm just going to take my piece of webbing, half webbing, and I'm going to insert it in the opposite side, stitch across and back stitch, move down a little bit, stitch across and back stitch again. And I'm going to do the same thing on this side. Just make sure your webbing goes down about an inch so that it stays where you want it to go. Okay. So that's what we got there. So somebody wanted to see the needle up, bringing the thread up again. Correct? Or do we have another question here?
You have one question, but yes, the needle up.
Okay.
So about what size dish do you think that will hold if you were doing like the measurement?
I would say this would hold a 9-inch square or round, or it would hold a, you know, like a foil package of fried chicken or a warm bun. Can y'all tell I haven't had lunch yet?
Is the InSoBrite washable?
Yes, it is. That's an excellent question, and I read that on the package the other night. So yes, it is. Whatever you make is washable. Great question. What else we got? So this one would hold a 9-inch. This one would hold a little bit bigger one, right? And you can make them whatever size you want to make them. If you want to make them rectangular, I would say, tell me what you did after you did it, because I haven't gotten that far. I'm working with squares. All right. So this one, this original one, has the intricate piecing on both sides, which is great if that's what you want. But I thought, yeah, I'm going to use this last piece that I have left over, and I just might make a table topper. That would be good. Or I might make a pillow. Not that I need any more pillows, but you can do whatever you like. Okay. All right. Back to reality. All right. Are there any other questions? I can get back over here and show you how to do that. We good? All right. I'm going to head over to the sewing machine. Okay. So this is, let me pull my bobbin thread out a little longer, because when you use a thread cutter, it doesn't leave a lot of extra thread to pull up. All right, so there that is. Close this up. All right, I'm going to bring my bobbin thread up by holding on to the top thread, needle down, needle up, and then just pull the thread and the bobbin thread will come up. All right, so that's starting. So I'm gonna run a couple of stitches. Now I'm finished sewing, and I'm going to bring my bobbin thread back up to the top. I'm gonna lift my needle I'm going to lift my presser foot because if my presser foot stays down, I still have tension on my thread. I want to pull my piece forward, or I can just pull the thread, but pulling the piece forward is just as easy. I'm going to lower my presser foot. I'm going to drop my needle. I'm going to bring it up, and the bobbin thread comes up automatically. Then I'm going to raise my presser foot, and I'm going to pull my fabric away. And then there's no thread on the end. Okay? So, any more questions? We good? You guys are great. I so appreciate you sewing with me. Let me move over here to the cutting table, and then I'm gonna share a couple more pieces for you. Free yourself. Have fun. Breathe. Get your scraps ready that you cut last night, because the improv continues. Oh, wait. No, for those of you who are intimidated by improv, we're going to be piecing some scraps together to do some scrappy Black girl magic with Carol. All right. Thank you all so much for joining me. I really appreciate you being here. I appreciate your involvement, your participation, and your support. Love you guys.